have here is a 1948 Ford Deluxe. Don't be fooled by the emblem on the hood. It's not a Super Deluxe, just the emblem is. And while it will, in most people's minds, ruin the value, ruin the car, it's sacrilegious, I'm going to do a transplant and put the entire frame, engine, transmission, running gear, air conditioning, cooling system from this 2000 Ford Ranger under this 48 Ford. I'm going to try to do this without modifying the Ford Ranger's cooling system, air conditioning, or any other component. I don't want to go with aftermarket radiators or anything of the sort. I want the Ranger to be 100% the way it rolled off the line as far as all of the parts of the cooling system. This 48 Ford has a fine running flathead V8. It also has the original transmission, original rear end, torque tube, original kingpin front end, original mechanical shocks, and I hate every single bit of it. It is about 70 years old, and there's a bad bushing in the torque tube. The rear end leaks horribly, needs to be rebuilt. The kingpins are shot, they need rebuilt. And while the engine runs well, it still has points. It is carbureted. It is the wrong carburetor, and I don't want any part of it. And while I can rebuild every single component of this car, I'm still going to be riding on 70-year-old technology, which I find to be unsafe and unreliable. What I want is, instead of spending $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on rebuilding this or getting one of your fancy Art Morrison frames or chassis and then finding an engine and a rear end and a transmission and dropping it in, I'd rather take a running, driving, completely fine, relatively low mileage car and put it underneath here. Now, this will not be a show car. It will strictly be a driver. It will not be one I'll pop the hood at when I go to a car show, because no one needs to see this. They're not going to care anyway. It's going to be your stock 4.0 out of a Ranger that's been shoved into this thing. It won't be super pretty, but it will go down the interstate at 70 miles an hour all day long. It will cost me almost nothing to do this swap, except for my time, which is free, because I find that to be like a therapy kind of thing. And also, parts will be readily available in stock and super cheap no matter where I go, as opposed to special ordering ridiculous parts for a 70-year-old suspension. And I know I can already hear it. Well, this suspension is just fine, it rolled great. 70 years ago, I find it unsafe. I don't have any use for it. I think they're dangerous. I think that all of these things should be upgraded. And yes, you can upgrade them to disc brakes and Mustang 2 front ends. However, what I have in this truck in this entire swap will be less than the price of the cross member that you can buy a Mustang 2 conversion for. And that is why I'm doing this. Oh, also, I will have the complete running gear for this vehicle for sale. If anybody wants it, please hit me up. You can have this thing for a very reasonable price. You come and get it, we'll talk a few $100 and you can take it with you. Engine runs great. I'll show a video later. Shifts good. Doesn't roll real well. Stops okay. Doesn't steer worth anything. There's a bushing bad in the column. So anybody wants a complete running gear out of a 1948 Ford, let me know. 'Cause I'm more than happy to get rid of this thing. Here on the board you can see some simple equations that'll help you understand better why I do what I do. First, you'll see car. This can be any car, primarily old cars, as I like them, the crustier the better. Car plus poop, which is your old suspension, here showing what it is poop, equals sad, angry face. Because you're going on the road, you're not going to make it. It's dangerous and scary. Now, second law, the line here you'll see in this simple equation, old car plus shiny, happy, sparkly parts that are safe and awesome and new equals happy, smiley face. Look how happy he is. Now, to sum up and make sure we're all on the same page, here's the full equation in its entirety. Car minus poop plus sparkly, happy, shiny equals happiness squared, or double happy, if you will, because there's happy for sparkly parts and happy for safety. Thank you for coming by and sharing this time with me. So I guess my philosophy, or my reasoning for doing this is, well, one, because I love the car, the 48. Two, because I want to see if I can. And C, because I want all the modern conveniences of this Ranger with the style and class and awesome of this body. And I don't have a whole lot, I don't have a ton of money to do the work and Sure, I could put a Art Morrison chassis into this thing and a Mustang 2 with Mustang 2 front end and a Ford 9 and drop a Coyote engine in this thing with a 6-speed and the whole 9 yards with vintage air. Sure, I could do that. Or I could just about pay my house off, because that's probably $50,000 worth of parts on that car. And by the way, it'd be probably $30,000 to $50,000 worth of aftermarket parts on this thing just to make it ride like it will on a Ranger frame. So there's that. You know, nothing I love more than having a $50,000, $60,000 car that's worth $30,000. That's a great investment, in my opinion. Or this car was free. I traded a Jeep for it I already had, so I consider that free. And I wasn't using the Jeep very often. And I got a free Ford Ranger from a buddy who I found another car for, and this car was in too bad a shape to pass forward as far as the front suspension, and it ran terribly. It just needed a bunch of work, which I've done everything with the suspension, so it runs great, air conditioning's cold, so it's good to go. So now I really just want to put this car on top of the Ranger and spend as little money as possible to get out into the road and start enjoying this car, because while this does run well and it does move, it doesn't drive well at all. The steering shot, the rear end shot, transmission has bad synchros for third gear. It will go into third, but it grinds terribly going in and out. And the brakes are, well, it stops when it wants to. So, and that's fine. These cars are not known for their amazing drivability, but I want to take this thing, if I have a show in, say, Union, South Carolina, and I want to go to another show after that in Asheville, North Carolina, I want to be able to jump in the car and just kick right down the interstate at 70 miles an hour, no problems, no worries, and be able to make it there and make it home without having to play the am I going to make it game. And if something does happen, I want to be able to plug my scanner into this car, see exactly what's going on, and then stop by any parts house and pick the part up in stock for a relatively cheap price and fix it. So that's the logic behind what I'm doing here. I want all the style of this 48 Ford Super Deluxe, but with the reliability of a 20-year-old Ford Ranger with about 140,000 miles, which the 4.0 I think personally is a good engine, so I'm not concerned about getting a few more thousand miles out of it with no issue kicking down the road. But that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to prove to myself, and just to bring you along for the ride if you'd like to come and watch, that you can, for very little money. Now of course you have purchase price of the vehicles. Not everybody gets to trade for one and is given another, but regardless, these Rangers are about $1,000 to $1,500, so they're very cheap for what you get, especially when you consider the price of a Mustang 2 front end is about the price of this Ranger for the most part if you buy one from online. Or if you get an Art Morrison chassis, what's that, 10 grand? And then you've got the engine and transmission to source. So for $1,500 off the internet, that's pretty average. Get you a single cab long bed Ranger. For these things usually run around here in this area between $1,500 and $3,000, give or take condition. But I just want to prove that it can be done very cheap, and you can get out and have fun and have all the modern conveniences of a quasi-modern 20-year-old Ranger, like air conditioning and power steering, and still enjoy the body of this car and be able to drive around in a 48 Ford, and nobody cares.